I have been waiting for you, Draka. Ogre Kingram suddenly spoke, making the students wonder who Draka was. Luen did not expect Kingram to know about Draka, even though he had been searching for information for months and had found nothing about Draka. Kingram asked Luen again if he knew Draka. Luen didn't answer. He even wanted to know more about Draka from Ogre Kingram. Kingram smiled slightly because he didn't expect to encounter Draka's incarnation in this academy. He then intended to leave the examination location, saying he would remember Luen Ardell. Kingram said he had just received magic released by Luen that he couldn't evaluate, so he wanted to temporarily stop the exam. An exam supervisor tried to stop him, saying that Mr. Kingram had to complete the exam no matter what, as per the contract agreed upon 500 years ago. Apparently, the supervisor's words angered Kingram. He had been evaluating the exam well all this time, so the supervisor couldn't just say whatever he wanted. Nevertheless, Kingram realized he was bound by the contract and had to give Luen a grade for the exam. Kingram asked Luen whether he would choose a score of 0 or 100. Luen was surprised, but of course, he would choose a score of 100. Luen's achievement of getting a score of 100 from Kingram became a topic of discussion at the academy. According to Professor Haydel, news of Luen's achievement reached the dean's office because it had never happened before. Professor Haydel handed Luen a scroll. Inside the scroll was written, "Artifact Room." Professor Haydel invited Luen to follow him. Luen was taken by the professor to a place he had never visited before. He didn't expect such a place to exist, and it turned out to be a place that was not supposed to be entered. Professor Haydel said it was the entrance to the artifact room, and he couldn't accompany Luen inside. That meant Luen had to enter the room alone. Luen entered the artifact room and saw many artifacts stored there. He thought it must be Froyen Ignat's magic warehouse. Suddenly, Luen heard someone asking him if he was lost. Luen searched for the source of the voice and found that it was Ogre Kingram speaking to him. He wondered why Kingram was in this room and why he didn't look like a stone statue. With a smile, Kingram explained that only in this room could he use his true form. This was possible because of an ancient mana power in the room. Kingram then spoke as if Luen didn't know his true value. Luen didn't understand Kingram's words. Kingram tried to explain that although Luen used the same player artifact as Draka, he didn't know the extent of his abilities. Kingram was curious where Luen got the artifact. Luen asked Kingram to explain who Draka was. Kingram began to describe Draka's figure. Draka was a human who sought to become a god. Draka had a small and short stature. One day, Draka went to the Skypic tribe, the home of the ogres. The ogres, who didn't like having someone visit their place, eventually attacked Draka. However, Draka's abilities were so great that he was difficult to defeat by the ogres. Draka's strength even increased every day. The ogres eventually admitted defeat and respected him, so Draka lived among the ogres. At that time, Kingram was the successor to the tribal chief. Draka taught magic and human language for 1,000 years so he could communicate with humans. Luen wondered how a human could live for 1,000 years. Kingram explained that it was because Draka was not actually human. Draka's true identity was the Black Dragon of Dracagonia. He was actually a dragon, and dragons were known as the source of all magical knowledge. However, unfortunately, Draka didn't have the ability to fight, so he created a fighting style like Luen's. He could perform magic with his hands and feet. Luen finally understood who Draka was, whom he had been searching for. He thought perhaps Draka had also been belittled and hurt like himself in the past, so he created magic that only he could do. With his power and abilities, Draka could defeat anyone in the world because his magic couldn't be imitated by anyone else. However, Draka was not satisfied with his power at that time, so he continued to develop his strength. Eventually, he destroyed himself. Luen opened the window and achieved something new by finding information about Draka. He was then given the nickname Ogre's Friend. With this nickname, he had the ability to understand the ogre language and had a low likelihood of becoming an ogre enemy. In addition, the window activated the ogre fury, which functioned to borrow the anger of ogres and become strong for a while. And he received a Strang gift. Luen asked Kingram about Strang, the gift he had just received. Ogre looked at the Strang Luen brought. He explained that it was not an item but an incarnation. Kingram often saw it with Draka in the past. Strang was like power. Although it was often called a spirit, it was not an ordinary spirit. Strang had a bad character and always asked for unlimited power from Draka every day. According to Kingram, if Luen could fulfill Strang's wishes, Strang would give him unlimited power. An incarnation would be born from this round stone called Strang. And indeed, not long after, the stone shattered and released a small bear figure. Luen was surprised by the presence of the small bear. However, the small creature was angry and didn't want to be called a bear. He asked Luen to treat him well. Luen still felt puzzled about how the small bear could speak. Luen asked the small bear what creature it was. The bear-shaped Strang explained that it was an incarnation. It could become anything according to its desires. Strang then tried to demonstrate its shape-shifting ability, but it failed. It thought maybe it was because it was hungry, so it couldn't transform. It asked Luen for food. Luen said there was no food here, and he didn't know what food he could give to Strang. Strang became annoyed and mocked that its current master was very weak. Then it wanted to sleep and asked to be awakened when there was food. Luen was still puzzled and didn't understand why the small bear called him master. Kingram laughed at Strang's antics, which he had known for a long time. He remembered Draka, whom he had known before and always accompanied Strang. Kingram asked what Luen would do next with Strang accompanying him. Strang accompanying Luen would make him stronger. That power might lead Luen on the right path or devour Luen alive. Therefore, Kingram asked what Luen would do after becoming strong. Luen remembered his aspirations when studying magic. He wanted to protect his family from the demons and make the Ardell family name known so he could prove himself to those who had belittled him. Therefore, he wanted to live according to his own will to protect his friends, family, and himself. Kingram smiled and looked forward to what would happen in the future. Luen returned to his usual activities as a student and carried out quests ordered by the window. But this time, he had to feed Strang. Strang always wanted to eat and was never satisfied. Strang's food was the power that Luen gained from completing each quest. Every power eaten by Strang would be returned as greater power to Luen. This had an impact on Luen's rapid development of abilities. Luen gained an additional 100 power each time Strang became stronger. If Strang became 2 stars, then it would give 200 times the power. If it became 3 stars, then 300 times, and so on. Strang had reached 31 stars before it was locked. That meant it gave 3,100 times the power. It was a tremendous power, while Luen's power had not yet reached 1,000. So, how could he achieve such great power? Luen asked Strang, were there any other ways to grow stronger besides quests? Strang explained that there were many ways to gain more power, such as by doing more difficult quests to receive better rewards. It could also be done by creating an item or finding artifacts. Another way was to boil ogre tendons and make elixirs. However, to do that, Luen had to have at least 1,000 power. Currently, he was still in the early stages, so he had to strive to get more than 1,000 power first. Luen practiced every day to gain the power he desired. Currently, his power had reached 930. The third practical exam began. This third exam was a real battle, so there was a possibility of spells hitting allies in the chaos. The purpose of this exam was to test a magician's risk control ability. The Foldron Knights helped in conducting the exam to ensure the safety of the students and to test their cooperation with them. The exam lasted for 10 days. Participants would be given different monsters as their opponents. In the end, only 13 participants with the highest scores remained. All the students were curious about what kind of monsters they would face in this exam. The students were surprised by the presence of orcs in the exam arena. These orc characters were ferocious, with bodies much larger than humans. The intelligence of the orcs was equivalent to humans, so they often clashed with humans. There was anxiety among the students participating in the exam. Professor Haydel advised them to always be vigilant and do their best. Mikkel prepared to start the magic battle with the orc. He stood behind the knights who protected him. Mikkel released ice arrows toward the orc, but his attack could be avoided by the orc. The orc jumped to attack Mikkel from above. Professor Haydel, who was overseeing the exam, warned Mikkel to dodge, but it seemed Mikkel couldn't move his body out of fear. With a quick movement, Professor Haydel released a magic prison tree to prevent the orc from attacking Mikkel. Mikkel was saved from the orc's attack, but was declared defeated in this exam. Professor Elric, Michael's uncle, looked angry because his nephew failed in this exam. Professor Elric asked Professor Tyrin if they would continue this exam. Professor Tyrin didn't understand what Professor Elric meant, but wasn't it Luin's turn next? Professor Elric suggested that Luen should be given a different opponent than the other students because he always scored high in the previous exams. Professor Tyrin understood Professor Elric's meaning, but he didn't have any creature other than orcs. Professor Elric explained that they had one creature that was suitable to fight against Luen. When the Fauldron brought the orcs, they also brought another creature, which was more ferocious, namely an ogre. Professor Haydel found Luen in the corridor of the academy. He informed Luen that he would be tested against a tougher opponent compared to others. The academy had high hopes for Luen after he received the highest score from Kingram, so it wouldn't be fair if Luen's opponent in this exam was the same as the other students. The monster Luen would face in the exam was an ogre, not an orc like the other students. The ogre was prepared to be Luen's opponent in the exam. Mikkel didn't expect Luen's opponent to be an ogre. The ogre indeed resembled an orc, but it was stronger. Its punches could crush human skulls and shatter human bones. The ogre was quite difficult to defeat, even by the knights. However, this was the decision of the Academy's dean. Luen Ardell began to prepare to fight the ogre. Many of the Fauldron doubted whether Luen could face the ogre. With determination, Luen walked forward to approach the ogre. However, one of the Fauldron knights stopped him. He instructed Luen to stay behind the knights to be protected. Luen insisted on fighting up front with the knights because he believed that the magic he possessed could defeat the ogre. However, the knights couldn't protect him if he was in front. They still ordered Luen to stay in the back position. Without fear in his eyes, Luen began to prepare to fight the ogre monster alongside the knights tasked with protecting him. Suddenly, Luen moved forward to attack the ogre. Meanwhile, the ogre's chain bindings opened, and the ogre prepared to receive Luen's attack. Luen unleashed a fireball magic to hit the ogre, but was blocked by the ogre. It turned out Luen was using close combat spells. The sound of booming and smoke enveloped the arena as Luen's and the ogre's punches clashed. Everyone who witnessed the fight was shocked and didn't expect Luen to still stand after engaging in close combat with the ogre. One knight approached Luen and warned him to be careful when using close-range attacks. Luen still intended to attack again, but was stopped by the knight. The knight instructed Luen to retreat, but Luen still wanted to continue the fight because it was an exam he had to face. He had to complete this exam on his own.